Could you put the bridge back up real quick? So it says, the mountains shake before him, the demons run and flee. We've got a class tomorrow on that very verse. At the mention of the name King of Majesty, there is no power in hell or any who can stand before the power and the presence of the great I am. What does that mean? The great I am. That's like a part of speech. And I know you didn't have school today, but it's going to get a little bit English language here, right? Which is interesting because the original language wasn't English. And in our language, it's kind of hard to interpret what the original language was, because the original language was almost just like an exhale or a breath when he said what his name was. So the theme of the weekend is, who do you say I am? Right? This is the first winter retreat we've done in 2 years. The last time we were together at a winter retreat was 2020. It was the end of February, and guess what happened 2 weeks later? Where were you in the world? But anyway, that's a whole different thing. 9/11, that was 2020. But yeah, literally 2 weeks later, we shut down, and guess what? For the first time in 30 years of my life, I did not get to go to church camp. We did it online, and many of you joined us. And then last year, we couldn't do a winter retreat because we were still pretty much locked down. We didn't even know if we were going to do camp again, and we were trying to figure it out. And then 3 weeks before camp, the governor's like, hey, we can just open back up. And we're like, woohoo, camp. And it was awesome to be together. But why do guys like me and Dave Pack and Sean Williams devote our entire lives to doing this stuff? Because guess what? My car is down in North Carolina right now because it got hit by a tree branch last week. Bill, if you're watching, hey. But I have to drive Sunday morning. We leave here tomorrow night late. I have to get up early Sunday morning and drive back down to North Carolina to pick up my car because the tree branch made it so I couldn't drive it. So I literally could be doing a lot of other things than hanging out with 80 teenagers in a locked up church building this weekend, right? Most people think I'm probably crazy for doing that. They don't understand teenagers. It's been a while since they've been one. But why do we do this? Why do we spend our entire lives spending weeks in the summer, spending time in the fall, spending time, Dave and Jason and Cole, we get together once a month and talk about how we can do this ministry and what we're going to talk about and the themes and all this stuff. Why in the world do we spend our time doing that instead of just watching football or something? Which we did the one time, which was really cool, but it's because we have seen the power and the presence of the great I am. Dave, what was the first year you were a staff member of church at church camp? 1985. Dave has been doing this since 1985. 90% of the people in this room weren't even born in 1985. Many of you had parents who were maybe 5 in 1985, right? So he's been doing it for a while. I've been going to camp since 1983, and I've been a director since 2009. I've been on staff since 1996. That's a lot of numbers, and it's Friday night. I'm sorry, right? But we have dedicated the last 3, almost 4 decades of our lives pouring into generation after generation after generation because we have come face to face and encountered the great I am. Moses, if you've got your Bibles, which I know that's kind of a thing of the past because you got your phones. I really, really like Bibles. By the way, this Bible is older than most people in this room. It's from 1990. But anyways, Exodus chapter 3. If you have your phone or a Bible, there's maybe some Bibles in front of you. Exodus chapter 3, really easy to find. It's the second book of the Bible. Genesis, then Exodus. And just by the second book of the Bible, after the first book, God's people were already enslaved. In Genesis, we hear the story of Joseph, the guy with many colors who ended up in Egypt. He ran away from Potiphar's first wife. There's a whole, literally, we have done an entire week of camp just on the life of Joseph. He got all of his brothers and family to Egypt right before a famine hit and was able to protect and take care of because he got in good with Pharaoh. There were 12 brothers, which became the 12 tribes. Their dad was renamed Israel, which is why they're the Israelites, right? This is where the Jewish people came from. Abraham, Isaac, and on down. And so, literally, these people, these 12 tribes multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. And by the end of Joseph's life, there were millions, hundreds of thousands. And then by the time Moses comes along, Moses is born about, depending on who you see, about 60 years later after Joseph died. And by the time Moses was 80, right, so now that's about 140 years, there were now up to 3 to 5 million of them. There was now a new Pharaoh, and that Pharaoh said, you know what? They outnumber us like big time, and if they ever figure this out, they're going to take over our land. So they enslaved them and made them work for them. My personal opinion, it's not in the Bible. I think that's where the pyramids came from. They used all that slave labor. It's an interesting theory. Some might say it's conspiracy theory. I don't know. But anyways, there was millions of them working for the Egyptians, right? And so they're building clay bricks and all this stuff. So Moses, when that Pharaoh came along, he killed all the baby boys to try to decrease the population. Moses' mom put him in the basket. You may know this story. Put him in the basket. Pharaoh's daughter found him. They raised him in Pharaoh's palace. Moses was raised in Pharaoh's palace. He was raised along with Pharaoh's kids. Around the age of 40, Moses knew he was an Israelite, and he saw an Egyptian treating one of the Israelites poorly, and he killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. And then he got scared for his life, and he ran. And he hid in the wilderness. Ended up marrying a lady and became a shepherd. So that was when he was about 40. For the next 40 years, he's in the wilderness. And that's where this history lesson, sorry about that. So much school. We've got English, we've got math, we've got history. It's everywhere. Anyways, Exodus chapter 3. Moses is tending his sheep. And it says, now Moses was tending the flock. Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord, many times that means Jesus, okay, appeared to him in flames of fire within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight. Interesting. Why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to take a look, God called to him from within the bush, said, Moses, Moses. Moses like, here I am. Like, come on. What kind of trippy thing are you on where you're seeing a bush burning but not burning up, and then you hear it call your name, you're like, oh, I'm right here. Yeah, that's me. Like, I'd be running the other way, right? Like, freaking out. Like, how does this bush that's on fire know my name? Come on. He's like, yeah, sure, I'm right here. Something may have gotten lost in translation there. I'm not sure. He says, do not come any closer. God said, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He went back through his lineage there. These are all his grandparents and great-grandparents. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt, and I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, because apparently those are great things. The home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Ammonites, the Perizzites, I don't know what that one is, Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way of the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to the Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I? Right? The question this weekend is, who do you say I am? Which, that's God saying that, right? So Moses asked God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt, even though this is the guy that was raised in Pharaoh's palace? He knows that he is not welcome there because he knows that they know what he did. And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your father has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what should I tell him? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. There's a lot of Hebrew and stuff in there. But the basic thing is this. By saying I am, he said, I was before anything else. I am now, and I will be forever. This was a new word that had never been spoken before. It was Yahweh. Cole wrote us an amazing song about it. But actually, the A and the E in Yahweh were not in this. It was more like Yahweh. It was more like a breath that was to be breathed. Because the Israelites knew that even God's name was so holy they couldn't even say it. They who hadn't really seen him for decades and decades and decades knew about the God of their fathers, Abraham and Jacob and Isaac. And they had respect for him. And maybe you're sitting here today because your parents made you come, or because your parents make you come to youth group, and the youth group was doing something, and you're like, yes, I want to get out of the house, so I will take my parents' $20 and eat a lot of pizza and double doozies and stuff. And you don't even know what those are, but those are tomorrow. They're coming. But you're like, I just want to get out of the house. These people wanted to get out of the house. They wanted to get out of Egypt, and God says, I'm coming. I, the God of all time, the God before there were gods, am coming. Because guess what? In Egypt, there were gods for everything. Ra was the sun god. There was a god of water. There was a god of the land. There was a god of fertility. Ew. There was a god of all kinds of stuff, right? And God said, I am not one of the gods. I am the capital I am God. That's what he said. And God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the God, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name by which I am to be remembered from generations to generations. And so they later added that in, and they kind of changed it to Adonai, is what they changed that to, because they weren't allowed to say Yahweh because that name was so holy that they couldn't even say it. So Adonai became Father. So he says, go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, and all that. And he says, and I promise to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt and in the land of the Canaanites and all the Pizzaites and stuff. That's not Pizzaites. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the desert to offer sacrifice to the Lord. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So basically, this is where the 10 plagues come in. Listen to this cool piece. You may know a few of the 10 plagues, but not all of them. Basically, there was he turned the sun dark, except it was only on the Egyptians, not the Israelites. He turned the Nile into blood, not like red food coloring, actual blood. He brought the grasshoppers and the locusts and all that. Every single one of the 10 plagues attacked a specific god that the Egyptians were worshiping. They thought, just for example, Ra, the sun god. They believed that Ra, the sun god, the sun was Ra's chariot. And to prove that he was a god, he rode that chariot through the sky during the day, and when it got dark at night, he was in the underworld. He was dead. But because he was a god, the next morning he rose again and provided sunlight again. So what did the I Am do? He made it dark for 3 days. Weird, right? 3 days of no God. And showed them that their God was not the God. The God took the sun away. And the same happened with the other 10 plagues. Till finally, even Pharaoh said, okay, their God is, we can't deal with him. One more story. Later on, if you open your book to the middle, your Bible to the middle, it's Psalm. Right before that is Job. At the very beginning of Job, we were introduced to him. It said there was a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright, and he feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep. Who needs that many sheep? I don't even know, but he also had 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. That's a lot of animals. Like too many. And he had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people. His sons used to take turns holding feasts in their homes, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. And when a period of feasting had run its course, Job, would send and have them purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering, each of them thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. So this was his custom, like he was going to take care of his people. One day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, which this is a whole thing. I haven't done all of the research into this, but it's a really cool thing. And Satan also came with them. Satan was in heaven. Okay? You want to know more about the whole fall of Satan? Dave Pack knows a ton about that. You can ask him. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming the earth and going back and forth in it." The Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil." "Does Job fear God for nothing?" Satan replied. "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." Because, that's why we go to God, to get something. On social media or at school or at church, when do people say, "Hey, I need some prayers, unspoken prayer. I need this prayer, I need that prayer"? When? When something's going bad. I have never, ever, 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 ever seen on the years I've been on social media somebody say, "Hey, somebody pray for me today because God is blessing the out of me." Right? Like, I've never seen that. I've never seen somebody ask for prayers thanking God for the awesomeness that's happened. It's always, "God, help me. God, heal me. God, protect me." All these things, right? And that's what Satan's saying. He only is good to you, God. He only believes in you because you give him all this stuff. And God said, "Well, take it away." So, he did. It says, one day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and carried them off." How do you carry off 500 donkeys? I don't know, but they did. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who's escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the fire of God fell from the sky and burned up the sheep and the servants. Talk about a barbecue. Goodness, it's a lot of 7,000 sheep burning up. That's a lot. And I tell you, I am the only one who's escaped to you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and carried them off. How do you carry off that many camels again? I don't know. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one to escape you. While he was still speaking, this is like 30 seconds and all this stuff is happening. Yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house when suddenly a mighty wind, tornado, swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are all dead, and I am the only one who escaped to tell you. The next 38 chapters of this book is Job's wife, Job's friends saying, dude, give it up. Job's wife even said, curse God and die. This God who you were worshiping, right? Let all these bad things happen to you. Guess what? God is still the I am through the bad stuff. He's not just the God of blessings and the God of good stuff. He's the God when bad stuff happens. He even let it happen to his own son. Like that was the plan from the beginning. So Job spends like 30 chapters like, God, why? Have you ever been like that with God? Like, God, why is this happening? Why did my parents get divorced? Why did my grandma die? Why? Why do you, you're God, you can stop all these things. This is a little bit lengthy. My voice may give out, but I want you to hear God's response to Job. Okay? And we're about done here. It says, then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. God said this, who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Basically, Job, you don't know what you're talking about. Brace yourself like a man, and I will question you, and you're going to answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me, if you understand, who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set, or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness? When I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place? When I said, this far you may come and no farther. Here is where your proud waves halt. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. The wicked are denied their light, and their unpraised arm is broken. Have you journeyed to the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been shown to you? Have you seen the gates of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me if you know all of this. What is the way of the abode of light? And where does darkness reside? Can you take them to their places? Do you know the paths to their dwellings? Surely you know, for you were already born. Basically like, you are the I am. You have lived so many years. Do you guys know God's a little bit sarcastic sometimes? Kind of, yeah. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow or seen the storehouses of the hail, which I reserve for times of trouble, for days of war and battle? What is the way to the place where it is light, where the lightning is dispersed, or the place where the east winds are scattered over the earth? Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain and a path for the thunderstorm, to water a land where no man lives, a desert with no one in it, to satisfy a desolate wasteland and make it sprout with grass? Does the rain have a father? Who fathers the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice? Who gives birth to the frost from the heavens when the waters become hard as stone, when the surface of the deep is frozen? Can you bind the beautiful Pleiades? Can you loose the cords of Orion? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or lead out the bear with its cubs? You know, the constellations, yeah. Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set up God's dominion over earth? Can you raise your voice to the clouds and cover yourself with a flood of water? Do you send the lightning bolts on their way? Do they report to you? Here we are. Just get that mental picture like lightning bolts. Hey, God, I'm over here. Thanks. Who endowed the heart with wisdom, or gave understanding to the mind? Who has the wisdom to count the clouds? Who can tip over the water jars of the heavens when the dust becomes hard and the clods of earth stick together? Do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of lions when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in a thicket? Who provides food for the raven when its young cry out to God and wonder about for the lack of food? Do you know the mountain goats give birth? He's bringing all of this stuff in there. Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months till they bear? Do you know the time they give birth? They crouch down and bring forth their young. Their labor pains are ended. Their young thrive and grow strong in the wilds. They leave and do not return. Who let the wild donkey go free? Who untied his ropes? I gave him the wasteland as his home, the salt flats as his habitat. He laughs at the commotion in town, and he does not hear a driver shout. He ranges the hills for his pasture and searches for any green thing. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? Will he stay by your manger at night? Can you hold him to the furrow with a harness? Will he tell the valleys behind you? Will you rely on him for great strength? Will you leave your heavy work to him? Can you trust him to bring your grain and gather it to your threshing floor? He goes on about ostriches. What? Ostriches. It says, did you give the horse his strength, or clothe his neck with a flowing mane? Do you make him leap like a locust, striking terror with his proud snorting? His paws fiercely rejoicing in his strength, and charges into the fray. He laughs at fear, afraid of nothing, and he does not shy away from the sword. At the blast of the trumpet, he snorts. Aha! He catches the scent of battle from afar, the shout of commanders and the battle cry. Does the hawk take flight by your wisdom, spread his wings toward the south? Does the eagle soar at your command and build his nest on high? He dwells on a cliff and stays there at night, a rocky crag in his stronghold. From there he seeks out his food, and his eyes detect it from afar. Young ones feast on blood, and where the slain are, there he is. The Lord said to Job, will the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? Like, I'm not going to drop that because mic drop. You may have gotten lost in all that, but basically God's saying, Job, you're complaining to me because you lost some things that were very important to you. Who made them? He started at the beginning with the earth. He's like, who set the boundaries for the oceans? Who hung the clouds in the sky? It was me. I did all of that. So who are you to complain to me? But why do we get in a situation in our lives where it's like, God, why did this happen? Why do these things happen? Why is this going on? So many times we ask God, why? And sometimes the answer is because. And that's not cool, because that's not really an answer. But when the Egyptians asked, or the Israelites asked, Moses, who sent you? He says, he is. Is that really an answer? It's a weird one. It doesn't make sense. But when you think about it, it makes complete sense. The one who was before all, is in all, and above all. wanted to free his people. And he wants to free you. You may not know who this guy is. This Yahweh, Adonai, Jehovah. You will someday. Hopefully this weekend you get introduced to some things about God that you didn't know. Hopefully you dive into who this guy is that we sing. It's not even really a guy. Who this God is that we say, he's just awesome. Because like the mountains like obey him. The demons obey him. I kind of obey him. But that's who we're following. That's why we're here. That's why Dave and I and Sean and many others have spent decades pouring into people, and young people especially, because he is all. There used to be an old hymn called "He is my all in all," right? Tomorrow we're going to look at some things, some pretty like almost VBS type stories. But we're going to look at them from a different perspective. A perspective of how does this prove who Jesus is? How do I know I can trust this guy? Today, trust is a very hard thing. It's hard to trust people. We've got filters on our social media pictures. It's a new thing going around now where people like show the filter and then show themselves. It's like, yuck, that's not the same thing. We can't trust photographs. We can't trust a post. We can't trust the internet. We can't trust our government. We can't trust our neighbors. How in the world, if we're in a world full of things and people that we can't trust, are we supposed to trust this God who says he is? Why? Why should we? I can't answer that for you. I know why I do. But the cool part is, this is not a blanket thing. By that I mean something that covers everything. He wants to be your God. His desire is that all would come to repentance and that everyone, every knee would bow and confess that he is the Lord. But that's on you. He's already done everything. He's already presented his case. It's up to us to decide now what we're going to do with that, right?